Can you remember the very first thing that you bought of significance that really made you feel like, yes, I am an equestrian. I am a horse rider. For many people, it's a helmet, it could be a saddle, could be a horse. You know, there's lots of things, okay? But in between all these big purchases, there's also loads of little ones. And over time, things can get really cluttered. And I think there's a lot to be said for decluttering that mess. And that's what I want to dive into today. Hey there, and welcome to the Daily Strides podcast. My name is Lorna Leeson. I'm an equestrian trainer and coach, and I love working with riders from all over the world to help them to, keep the fun in horse riding, keep it interesting for them and their horse, especially if they don't have a trainer to work with. Okay, so today I want to talk about decluttering things. Now, we're going to talk about physically decluttering, but we're also going to get into actually your riding as well. So if you're thinking, no, I've got that covered, bear with me here. I'm a huge fan of going through all of the things we use. And I don't think things we use are just physical. We use ideas and methods and beliefs and thoughts. We use all the things, okay? So I want to help you today to just spend a little bit of time this week, maybe 30 minutes or so, and see what sort of an effect it can have on you and on your riding. And trust me, this is it's crazy how much stuff that we can accumulate over the years, okay? When we think about stuff, like all the brushes, okay, hands up who has cupboard loads of brushes, okay? Like grooming brushes, or all the numbness. I know riders who have collections of numbness, and then they have the boots to match, and they have maybe the fly bonnets, and they have all the things to match, okay? But when you really and truly begin to think about all of the things you've accumulated, and as I said, this also goes for your riding, ideas and ways of doing things, it really is important to think about, hold on, what do I actually need? Because when we can begin to create this space, okay, it actually gives our minds and our brains and just everything more space to think about how we are progressing with our horses going forward, which is what I think is really important, okay? So first and foremost, I would just start going through and having a look at things that are not in regular use anymore. Now, I do agree that there are going to be some purchases that you're not going to use every day of the week. In fact, you might not even use every month of the year, but they're important purchases. Maybe it's a clippers, or maybe it's a poultice boot or something like that, okay, that you're not going to use it all the time, but you need it, you've bought it and you need it, and it's a helpful and useful asset, and you're going to use it at some point if necessary. That's great. I'm not talking about those things, okay? Keep all those things. I'm talking about the things that are simply sitting there taking up space, okay? Because I want you to consider that those things are actually part of a story that the past version of you as a rider had. And they actually no longer complement this current version of you as a rider today, okay? This could be certain equipment or training aids. It could be supplements or lotions and potions. Oh my goodness. This is like me. I actually recently went through the first aid kit at the barn, and I was going through it, looking at all these things, and I think we have this maybe this tendency to think, well, I spent money on this. I obviously saw value in it at some point on the journey, but maybe I'll need it, maybe I'll use it. But what tends to happen is often these things are things that maybe you purchased because somebody else recommended it, and then when you used it, you didn't like it at all, or you found it was not helpful for you in your situation. Or maybe it was something that as you've become more educated and more, I wouldn't say educated, just more knowledgeable, that's a better word, okay? And as you've begun to kind of develop your own style as a rider and as an equestrian, you're like, no, that doesn't sit with me anymore. And just back to my little story about the first aid kit, there was so many lotions and potions in there that I wouldn't use anymore. I was like, no, I don't like that. I've found better ways, different ways that work better for me right now, where I am in my journey right now. And I got to like really take out all that stuff and throw it away. And it was so freeing. But it was crazy to actually look at all the stuff. But also what I noticed then was once I had taken it all out, okay, so I'd like removed all this stuff, it left a lot of space in the box, okay, in like the medicine box, if you want, okay? Like there was all this, free space. And I was like, interesting. And, we naturally tend to want to say, okay, well, I can fill it. But then that got me thinking, okay, so what would I fill it with? Like, what would the current version of me put in there? What would she have in there right now? And then I got thinking about, and what about where I'm going? Like me in 3 years, what would she have in there? And that was a very good question, because then I began to think about maybe all of the things that I'd never even considered before regarding healthcare and all that fun stuff. And I once you kind of start to notice it, your mind automatically goes to work. And now suddenly I'm seeing, like different articles for different things. And I'm seeing different, things that people are using. And I'm like, interesting. Things that I probably wouldn't have even noticed before, because I would have just seen it and said, oh, no, it's fine. I've got the other stuff. But then once I actually got really, really clear on it, it created this space, and it got me thinking and wondering about like me as an equestrian, and also then my journey up to this point and my journey going on from this. What was also interesting, and I found this was really useful, was I was able to look back and say, gosh, like you've really changed, which is a good thing. I always think that's a good thing. Okay, maybe not always, but for the most part. But yeah, I got to look back and I thought, okay, you've grown, you've evolved. This is good. Okay. And I actually got to really see like through all this stuff that I was either going to throw out or rehome. I didn't throw everything out. There was some of the things that just wasn't suitable for me on my journey, but other people could happily have used them if they wanted it. But I got to kind of look at all this and really just get inspired by the fact that I'm still growing. I'm always growing. And I do believe we always are. And I think that that's really good. Now, I mentioned at the start of this episode that I think you should be applying this to your riding as well. And I think that as a rider, you're probably collecting and have collected a lot of mental clutter and a lot of riding habits, like so many habits. A good few years ago, I've spoken about this a few times, but a good few years ago, I found myself, I can't even remember what I was doing, but the whole point of this was I was doing it because I'd always done it that way. I was doing it like a certain way because I'd always done it that way. And once I realized that, I thought, that is not a good reason to do anything. Why am I doing this? And I began to like question things, and I began to kind of question everything. I went down a real rabbit hole. But it was interesting when we get to actually become self-aware and we get to see the habits, like we get to see ourselves, like how you groom or how you tack up, how you mount up, how you warm up, how you ride, how you cool down, how you untack, how you pack things away. All of the things that you're doing that have just become a habit over the years. And when you start to question, is this actually the best way I could do this today for me right now, where I am right now in my riding journey? Or is there actually a better way? Or is there a more useful way? Is there a more helpful way that I could be doing this? Okay. And you get to kind of change that. Now, I'm a big fan of habits. I thoroughly believe like we have to get things onto autopilot. And for the most part, habits are going to serve you well if they're kind of intentional. But at the end of the day, I feel that almost with everything, you will reach a point where that habit needs to be tweaked, where it is no longer serving you. It might actually be maybe blocking you, or it might be causing you to become stuck or plateaued in some point in your riding. So I think that it's really important to always be almost like assessing yourself, be self-aware, And what I like to do is I'll change one part of it. So it could be I change where I'm doing, let's say tacking up the horse. I'm going to change where I tack up the horse. Like I'm going to move out of the place we always tack up, because just that simple act of changing one part, which was the location, it actually opens up your eyes to a lot of other things, okay? Or you could change like one piece of equipment, or change one brush, or, whatever, okay? You know what you do. But when you can begin to change it, and then if we take this to our riding, when you can change one simple thing that you're doing on autopilot. So it could be how you stop the horse. Maybe you're a little bit too reliant on your hands, okay? And once you begin to like change that and you try to stop the horse without your hands, okay? Or with maybe much of a lesser role, your hands are playing a lesser role, it can be eye-opening to what else you'll actually discover through that exercise. And I think that that's really, really important. Now, I do think that you get some riders who they're really just stuck on a method or a way of doing something. I think that it almost comes with like experience. The more time you spend, the more you realize, hold on, there's actually so many different ways. There's so many different ways I can do this, and ways we can approach this, and ways we can make it happen. And different ways will work better for different horses and different riders. I really do feel that there's always something that we can learn, okay? And there's always people there to teach us, even if it's by them showing us what we don't want, okay? That's good. Now you've learned something, okay? But I do think that's important. And, even just with me, with having this podcast is 10 years old this year. I know. Isn't that bananas? But there you go. So it's 10 years old this year. And I'm pretty confident that there's some of the things I've said over the years that I wouldn't agree with 100% right now. And that's good. Just means I've changed, which is great. Fantastic, go with it, okay? But I would love for this to become part of you with your riding. Like a good example, it's one I use a lot, but is, I bet you the very first time you ever sat on a horse, like your very first ride, how you stopped the horse that day has drastically changed when compared to how you would stop your horse today, okay? So like how you'd halt. Like I bet you the first time you rode and the very last time you've ridden, they would look totally different. And that's good, okay? You've changed, you've grown, you've evolved. But it means that I bet you how you stop your horse now, today, and if we revisited that 5 years down the line, also is probably going to look a little bit different. You're going to have learned new ways, new methods. You're going to have, learned new ways to communicate to the horse and things like that. It's going to be more refined, okay? And because it's more refined, it looks different, okay? I think that if you can kind of just allow yourself to be present and put yourself into situations where you have to be present. And as I said, very often just changing an element, and a location is a great place to start. Changing something, an element of it, is a great way to really get you present, okay? It kind of takes you out of autopilot and you have to get really like, okay, what am I doing here? How are we doing this, okay? That is a great way to do it. And I believe what got you here won't get you there. And I think if you're wanting to go forward and to evolve and grow and continue on the journey of becoming a better equestrian, just for you and your horse, that you can show up better and have deeper communication and all that fun stuff, yeah, I think this is important with both your stuff, okay, quote unquote, stuff, physical and mental, and then your habits as well. I think it is a really useful thing to do. Okay, if you would like to have a little kind of a plan that you can follow this month to help you with your horse, you can pop on over to stridesforsuccess.com/month. There's a calendar there with past episodes of the podcast, because 10 years, there's a lot, hey? Past episodes of the podcast that you can dive into and that you can listen to help keep you moving forward and maybe spark some new ideas for you and your horse as well. Okay, you can find that over at stridesforsuccess.com/month. I hope you have a great week. Keep well. I'll chat to you soon. Be good. Bye.